So what is the future of travel this year? Well, it's looking up, according to our next guest. We're joined now by Axel Hefer, CEO of the travel company Trivago. So Axel, in your earnings report, Trivago wrote, quote, "We are optimistic that by the second half of 2021, there will be a strong recovery in travel activities with an initial focus of users on nature destinations, which we have already observed in the summer of 2020. So I want to dive into that a little bit. Why are you so optimistic about the second half of the year, despite the fact that, at least when we look at it globally, vaccine rollout is still going slowly?
Yeah, there are basically two reasons. The first reason is that no matter who you talk to and no matter which research you look at, there is a huge desire to travel right now. Obviously, a lot of us have been for months and some even for a year in very restricted situations and lockdown situations, and traveling, connecting with friends and family is on top of almost everybody's list. So there will be a lot of demand on the ability to travel. You have two factors. One is that you have the warmer weather kicking in the northern hemisphere that has helped actually last summer. But then more importantly, you've got the vaccination rollout, and there the infrastructure seems to work. So Israel, UK, and also the US to a lesser extent have shown that it is possible to vaccinate a lot of people, and it's basically held back by the availability of vaccines, which will ramp up now basically every month. So by the second half of the year, we are confident that there will be the ability to get a vaccination for the vast majority of people in the northern hemisphere, and that will lead to return of travel.
Now, for anyone that doesn't know, Trivago helps essentially users search for and compare prices for hotels and lodging. And I'm curious to know, as you guys are seeing it, when travel does start to pick up again, is it going to be international or will it be more domestic?
Yeah, the best data point that we do have is the behavior that we've seen in 2020. So when the travel restrictions were eased in summer, we've seen in almost all the markets a very strong demands for local travel, and local was predominantly domestic or neighboring countries. So US, Mexico, or in Europe for Germany, for example, Netherlands and Austria. And there, the destinations that were more classical summer family vacations, so the beach or the mountains, were extremely popular, whereas city destinations that you would think of more like a culture trip or a trip to experience the cities were not really popular.
What kind of travel do you think a lot of folks will be taking? Domestically here in the United States, a lot of folks have been using their cars. Cruise lines were doing really well until the pandemic hit. Do you think that folks will want to go back to that, especially since the cruise lines is really where we started to see those breakouts of the pandemic first?
Yeah, for sure, travel where you can control the transportation will be the very first to recover. Again, we've seen it last year. So where you can control and drive to the destination, and even more importantly, if anything is changing, quarantine requirements are changing on a short notice, a new variant is breaking out, you can actually return home. So that is the safest trip that travelers have on their mind. But then flight connections into safe destinations will be second. Cruises are not a business that we are into, to be honest. So I'm a bit skeptical that cruises will return at significant scale, as will as intercontinental travel will also struggle in 2021. But it all depends on how certain travelers will feel and how stable the situation will be, both in the country of origin of the traveler and the destination.
What are some of the biggest changes, that you're anticipating for the entire travel industry? We hear, some folks talking about requirement of vaccines or, almost like a vaccine passport in order to get on a plane. Do you see that coming down the pike?
It's a political decision whether you will allow for these kind of rules. My personal opinion is that you should allow travel when it is safe, and to have a vaccine, have vaccinated people traveling perhaps without testing could make sense, but to allow exclusively vaccinated people could lead to quite some problems if there is a certain sequence of receiving a vaccination. So you would basically give preference to a certain part of the population that might not be politically wanted. But generally speaking, by the second half of the year, I think that most people will have had the opportunity to get a vaccination.
I'm curious to know how you see things changing, at least when it comes to some of the search engines. We talk a lot about how companies like Google are, at least here in the United States, going to be facing some regulatory headwinds, especially over these antitrust and these monopoly allegations. I'm wondering how you see that impacting Trivago going forward, especially as a search engine like Google is huge in the travel industry and business as folks search for hotels and flights.
It is. And the way we are thinking about it, that is more a gradual change in sentiment, which has started really a few years ago. But you can see that by now, most of the governments around the globe do see that there is an issue with monopolies in the digital world. And with a lack of competition in certain products and certain verticals. And you just had a new antitrust law being passed in Germany. The European Commission is also looking into the issue. And in the US, as you mentioned, there is also a wide discussion about it. So it is more a gradual process that it is seen more as a problem. And politicians around the world will need to decide how to deal with these issues. And we as a business have obviously to operate in the environment that politicians set, as we've done in the past. And right now, we are in heavy competition with Google, in particular, in the hotel vertical. And until there is a change in regulation, that dynamic will stay the same.
All right. CEO of Trivago, Axel Hefer, thank you so much for joining us today.